Chair Drummond.
Here.
Vice Chair Billsberg.
Here.
Commissioner Dittrich.
Here.
Commissioner McClay.
Here.
Commissioner Major.
Here.
Chair Frost.
Here.
Vice Chair Spiegel is absent today. Commissioner Anit, also absent. Commissioner Gibbs.
Present.
Commissioner Merrick.
Here.
And ex officio member Woodward.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Ms. Davis, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Me? Did you see me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move. I'll second.
All in favor? Do we have,
Consensus?
Yes, yeah.
can I have a report on the posting of the agenda?
The agenda was properly posted on June 20th, 2024.
Okay, and do we do public comment first, or we don't? Oh, we don't.
Then we just go
You're going to
straight.
go right to the item.
Right to item, new business, specific coast highway master plan. I know that some people put in to speak.
Will be after the
Oh,
presentation.
after. Okay, so we have Caltrans here to give a.
So just let me go and give a little intro to them, and that's a little drum
Yes.
roll, and we'll kind
Go for it.
of. So real quick, ever since the accident happened on PCH, Caltrans and the city have been working really collaboratively and closely trying to make a ton of improvements on PCH. Caltrans has recently, I think they're pretty much completed with a director's order of 4.25 million on PCH, doing some improvements, improving signage. You can see some striping on the roadway, and there's some speed feedback signs they're in the process of putting in. So Caltrans has committed to doing a lot of different improvements. They have 2 other larger safety improvements that they're planning to do within the next couple of years. We have collaborated and worked together on doing road safety audits and doing specific walking down the streets on PCH, identifying all the areas where that need deficiencies to improve safety. We've gone through all those reports and developing potential projects to improve safety on PCH. This item tonight is a PCH master plan that Caltrans will be introducing and looking into starting and developing a plan that identifies safety improvements and other improvements on PCH to make this a better corridor. And so tonight we have a group from Caltrans here to give you a presentation and let you know what their program is, and I'll bring up Marlon, who's with Caltrans to kick things off.
Thank you, Rob. And I'll just come up here briefly. Thank you, committee members, chair. Just want to say thank you for inviting us to this opportunity to speak with you all today. My name is Marlon Regisford. I'm the Deputy District Director for Planning and Local Assistance at Caltrans District 7. And today, obviously, we're here to talk about what you all know as the PCH Master Plan, but what we also call the PCH Master Plan Feasibility Study. And we say that because this money is funded by our federal government through IGIF funds, the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act. So that's where the money is coming from to study this. We have basically all of fiscal year from now until June 30th, 2025, per federal guidelines to expend those funds on this feasibility study. But as we've committed to the city, we want to complete this as soon as possible. And when we say as soon as possible, this calendar year. So that's our intent, that's our hope. And we're looking for, of course, support, guidance, and also direction from the committee here, as well as all of our local partners and interested parties. So with that, I'd like to introduce the rest of our team and give you all a presentation today. So I'll start off, and our team can just introduce themselves. Why don't you go ahead, Dan?
Sure. My name's Dan Polsky, and I'm Principal Planner in the Division.
Good evening, Lee Haber, District 7 Chief Safety Officer, Division of Transportation Safety and Operations. Work with many of the staff here, Rob, work with Chris, Keegan, and Field, so pleasure to be here.
Right.
What do you
Go ahead.
Good evening, Abby Sagafi, Transportation Safety, Caltrans District 7. It's you, I have one friend. And he's only doing that because he knows I got 2 more days.
That's right.
Okay, thank you, Rob. You're too kind.
Hi everyone, I'm Salazar. I'm the Francis of Budget and System Planning.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex Kessel, an Associate Transportation Finances.
Hello, this is T. Paul, also Associate Transportation Planner here in Mobile Model System Planning.
All right.
Hi, Ryan Snyder, I'm Executive Liaison for Special Projects, and I'll be giving the presentation today. I'm in the Planning Division of District 7 as well.
Last thing I want to mention, our District Director, Gloria Roberts, and our Deputy District Director for Traffic Operations and Traffic Safety, Rafael Molina. They give their regards. They cannot be here today, but they appreciate the committee's support for this presentation. So with that, we can get started with the presentation. We're happy to take any questions beforehand, but Ryan, you can take it away if you like.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon or good evening, kind of on the cusp. Nice to be here with you. We are here with a very brief presentation just to kind of let you know about the plan that we're about to embark on or have recently embarked upon and how it fits in with other planning efforts that we're doing. But primarily the purpose of us being here tonight is to hear from you the sorts of things that you would like to see addressed in the plan. Rob mentioned the director's order, which has a number of countermeasures that we've been working on through safety with the speed feedback signs and other signs and delineators and some pavement markings. That's one effort. That's kind of a very, very short-term effort. There's another planning effort, which is a climate resilience plan that deals with climate adaptation, but it will also work with the same kinds of things we're doing here to try to find safety countermeasures for the remaining part of Pacific Coast Highway outside of Malibu. So what we're here to talk about is the master plan that we're going to do within the city of Malibu. Okay, so Caltrans is committed to safety first. I mean, this is really the big issue here. With all of the injuries and fatalities and crashes, you know, I don't need to tell you how important this is, so we're very much committed to safety. We want to prioritize elimination of fatal and injury crashes. This is really, again, sort of the heart of what we're doing. We also want to plan for all users and all modes, so we're thinking about not just people in autos, but also those who may be walking. Many of the fatalities and injuries are with pedestrians and bicyclists as well. And we're also looking at trying to make better accommodations for people who use transit. The direction we're headed with this, we first want to analyze the existing conditions. And this will be looking at crash statistics, where those crashes are occurring, what their causes are, and once we understand where they're occurring and what the causes are, we can apply what we call countermeasures. In other words, modifications that we make to the highway to make it safer, to make it sort of physical differences out there. And again, while we're doing that, we want to plan safe options for people walking and bicycling. So it's all kind of lumped together. We have to think about the highway holistically. We are, again, focusing the study area for this plan is the stretch within a Pacific Coast Highway within the city of Malibu. And here's a crash map that gives you a kind of a sense. Again, we're going to take this sort of thing, and we've got some really good data. We're going to look at that data, drill in, and find out, again, what the causes are. And we already know some things that we've looked at so far. There's a lot of illegal U-turns, turning movements, pedestrians crossing the street. I mean, there's some, quite a bit of information that we've already got, but there's really good data that we have, where we can look at every single crash that's occurred and understand what the cause was and what the movement was, where the auto was turning or whatever the movement was. And that gives us the information that we need to be able to produce, countermeasures to address the particular causes at those locations. So these are the steps. Collecting information, which is kind of, again, where we're at with this crash data, and in coming to you tonight. The next part is engagement. And engagement, community engagement, will be going on throughout. As you've seen, and we'll talk more about the workshops later on, but we'll have a series of workshops and some other things that we're doing to ensure that the community has had some say in this. This is very much community driven, and we want it to be that way. We're starting with a clean slate. We want to hear from you, we want to hear from the community what types of remedies that you're all willing to live with here. And so once we've had those first workshops, look at the analysis, we're going to develop the project concepts and bring those back. We'll have some concepts that we'll bring back to the community, things that we're thinking could address the safety issues. And then the draft and final study. And as Marlon mentioned, this final study will be concluded in December. So we've got a pretty short window to do a lot of work. And we're going to need to work with all of you in doing that. The engagement has three primary components to it. We will have an interactive website, and when I say interactive, I mean something where you can go on, anybody can go onto the website and point out places that they think need attention on a map. They can make comments in it. And so we'll be collecting information that way. We will also be conducting surveys, most likely two. We're developing a survey right now that will ask some basic questions, primarily about longitudinal changes to the street, the cross-section of the highway, but it will have other questions as well. We'll come back with a second survey once we've narrowed it down and then asked some other questions. Of these alternatives, what are your preferences? And here are the workshops we've got scheduled. The first one's coming up real soon, and we've been really delighted that the city's been extremely helpful in us getting the word out to people. But July 11th, we're going to have what we're calling a charrette-style workshop, which means the community will come in and roll up their sleeves and get to work. They're going to help us understand what they believe the issues are, and especially what changes they would like to see in the cross-sections. We're going to have tables out, and we'll have large aerial photographs of different segments. We've broken or looked at the highway, and it seems to fall into sort of 5 general typologies. In other words, the central area here has housing and stores on both sides, 4 lanes, center turn lane, parking on both sides. Other segments have housing on the beach side, but not on the other side. Some have housing on both sides. Some have no buildings on either side. So we're looking at these different types, and we're going to ask people, what kinds of changes they might like to see to each of these different types. Take that information and bring it back in the second workshop, which will be August 28th. And from that information, we'll develop several alternatives and say, well, of these alternatives, we heard what you said at the first one. here's what we heard, and we believe that these treatments are responding to that. Which of these do you like? Which do you prefer? Understanding all along that there are trade-offs that need to be made. And they're not easy trade-offs. I mean, much of the problem is caused by speeding. And some of the remedies need to slow cars down. But not everybody will like those measures. So we're going to try to satisfy as many people as possible with our countermeasures and you know, do the best we can with that. For those who can't make any of the sort of, especially the first public workshop, the first one is probably the most important. We will have a virtual workshop on July 18th as well. And that's already been publicized. We'll come back in November or December with a draft plan, draft sort of remedies again with the plan, and try to get feedback on that, and then finalize the plan. So that's our course of action. Here's some contact information, people you already met in the audience here. Charles, Alex, and Yu Ying. And now I want to turn it over to you. And these are the kinds of things that we want to hear from you. What are your priorities in the study? What changes are you willing to see? And what changes you're not willing to see? What impacts are you willing to accept? Are you willing to accept less parking along the highway? Are you willing to accept slower traffic in certain areas? So what types of things are you willing to go along with? And then other thoughts. Again, we're in the beginning stages and we want to hear from you. So with that, I will open it up. Yes.
Quick question, on the
Commissioner
July
Dietrich?
11th meeting.
Commissioner Dietrich, we still have public comment to go through,
I beg your pardon.
if you don't mind.
Okay.
All right, our first speaker will be Cassandra Riera.
Hi, I'm a resident up on Big Rock, and I just stopped by tonight. I really appreciate the need to improve the safety through PCH, but I'm very concerned with the current construction and the lack of support for those of us. For me, it's taking between 40 minutes to 2 hours round trip to go to Malibu High School. I've actually had to pull my kids out of Malibu and enroll them at Santa Monica because I can't continue to work full-time and have them commute. So there's been a lot of talk about trying to deal with giving the residents some support to deal with the work that's going on right now. And I just encourage you, please, when you're looking at this and looking at a plan, please build in concrete suggestions for helping support your current residents in dealing with the improvements that are really needed, but to have us be able to have a feasible existence while we're going through it. Thank you.
Are there any others?
We do have one more speaker slip, Michael Eckstein.
Hi guys, Michael Epstein, 30601 Business Sierra Drive in Malibu. First of all, to Caltrans, thank you guys. You guys get so much slack, so much negative publicity, and it's not deserved. We know that you are working hard. I've had the experience as the founder and creator of the triathlon here in 1987, who worked closely with Caltrans for 40 years, and you guys are great. So I apologize for the flack. There are a lot of restrictions and things that people don't understand that tie your hands, and the fact that you're doing this and taking the time to do this is appreciated by the city and by the residents. I think you've already hit on a lot of very key things. I think I mentioned I'm cycling on the highway since 1985. In 1989, we had a mutual friend killed on the highway that was cycling, and obviously there's been way too many deaths since then. So some things I just want to kind of throw out to the room to think about. There's been a lot of focus on downtown Malibu, eastern Malibu. Please don't forget about us in western Malibu as well. It hit me I don't know why, after it took me 40 years for this to hit me, but Trancas is literally the last traffic light for about 50 miles or 40 miles, and it turned into a racetrack. One of the things that you hit on was enforcement, and that's not really Caltrans's issue. And you know, my 2 cents is enforcement is probably 90% of the problem. And we've all seen it as residents. The change, whether it's since COVID, whether it's since last week, it's just crazy. It's we used to joke that it's a version of Too Fast, Too Furious out there, but it's not a joke. I mean, it's dangerous to cyclists, it's dangerous to pedestrians, it's dangerous to drivers. So I would throw it back to the city a little bit and hire more police. We have the money. We have $90 million sitting in the account. Stop pointing fingers at like, oh, you should hire the police. You should hire the police. I feel like without data, if you just wrote tickets for all the noise and illegal exhaust, we'd stop speeding. Just with that. Anybody have a second motion? You also hit on another huge one, U-turns. It's happened to us in the triathlon. And what's really appreciated is now all the kind of permanent barriers in front of Zuma, and I think it helps a lot. I think it's something to really look at, and I'll come and speak at some of the other meetings and put my 2 cents there as well. Obviously, as a cyclist, I have some little personal issues, and hopeful that the bike lanes can be wider and better marked, because I think that will help. And did I mention enforcement? I think that's a huge, and thank you guys. You guys are great. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael.
That concludes all of our speakers' lists.
Zuma Beach Triathlon?
Correct.
One of my favorites. Until I got to a point where my knees wouldn't let me run anymore. I did that every year.
I hear you.
All right.
Get on a relay team.
I've done that to this next one.
Yeah.
So, good. So, wanted to open it up to the commissioners.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys being here. So the first question is on July 11th, when and where will that be?
It will be here in this room, correct?
Yeah, so we're trying to, like, we're gonna go and set it up somewhere. It's probably in a multi-purpose room. That's where we have more room, but it's, yeah, we're looking at seeing where we can, we'll have it here, but we'll have that information out soon.
Okay, we don't have the time yet.
6:30, right? 6 or 6:30? 6 o'clock.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
City Hall.
Yeah,
So we're gonna
great.
send that out.
You know, as you were speaking, I thought of a couple things. And with pedestrian deaths, we know that's been a problem. Do you differentiate between, let's say, the tourist that's not paying any attention and some of the maybe homeless guys that are drunk or high or something like that? Would that give us any better information? And the reason I bring it up is we might be able to do something about the tourist. I don't think we can do anything about somebody, who wanders into the street completely oblivious. So I'm wondering if you break that, if you look that to differentiate those two things.
The data that we collect doesn't differentiate between those two. And you're correct, there's some things we're not going to be able to address. However,
So, just a couple different things. So, we're able to get some information if the law enforcement market is homeless, intoxicated, and other things. It will show up in our statistics, but when we go deeper, it means reading the reports. Then we can find that information. Also, from discussion with LA County Sheriff, where we had the person that committed suicide over here by Cross Creek Road with a tanker truck that one morning.
Yeah.
They do not mark that in a traffic collision report. They put it in a different type of report, so it doesn't fall into a traffic collision type of situation to get reported that way. So there is some differentiation. Some of those things are out, but not everything. But I'm also continuing, our team, Monty and myself and others are trying to get into a deeper discussion with law enforcement to clarify some of the things they do within their reporting, so we have a better understanding.
Great, because I think that might help us to focus better It's just like this crash report that you have that shows, wow, at the eastern end, we have all these accidents. And so my next question to you is, what are the cause of all those accidents in eastern Malibu?
We haven't, Lee may know, the planning team is just starting on this project yet, and we haven't gotten into that, but that is one of the very next steps, is to get into that data and try to understand it. We do know that a large portion of crashes along the whole stretch are illegal U-turns, pedestrians crossing the street at bad locations, and left turn broadsides, people pulling out of side roads and turning left. Those are some of the major issues, but I don't know.
Intoxicated drivers or under the influence.
Yeah.
Speed is a large part.
Yeah, but speed in itself is a huge cause.
Oh, sure.
And it makes crashes more severe, it makes them more common, and to the degree that we can tame the road a bit into a more civilized place so it's not a racetrack like Michael mentioned, that should help to eliminate all crashes.
Yeah.
Or reduce the number.
Well, we all know, everybody here knows that you're driving along when it's not jammed up, and maybe you're going 50 on your car's speedometer, and there's guys, going by 60, 70 miles an hour, and that's not the real speeders even. And so as Michael said, it comes down to enforcement, but then you get into, the city has the money, the sheriff doesn't have the manpower.
Well, there's also, one of the things we're going to be looking at is highway design has a lot to do with speed. There are things that we look at, which we call friction in a street or road that causes people to speed up or slow down. And when you have a lack of friction, in other words, a wide open highway and nothing to slow you down, no intersections with traffic signals, and and you can see a long ways, that just encourages speeding. So to the degree that we can kind of introduce some friction, we can make some progress in slowing things down. It won't be easy in some stretches, because some stretches by their nature are wide open and there isn't a lot of reason to slow down for some people.
I just want to echo that philosophy and want the commissioners to take that in and start thinking about, and if there's any ideas on what you envision or what the outcome of this is, and what things specifically you guys are looking to improve PCH. Is the look, or does it kind of certain things? This is your opportunity to kind of give them your thoughts before the charrette, and kind of so they can start developing that before and kind of knowing what they're going to do. But let me just kind of echo that. It's doing the road safety audit with Caltrans and looking at this phenomenon of wide streets, big long sections, just invites people to speed. On freeways where you have several lanes, long stretches, people go fast. It's the same thing on here too. It's the look and feel of that roadway kind of invites people to kind of do that. And so this is kind of an opportunity, I think, Caltrans is really kind of trying to get everyone's opinion on is what is it that we want to develop as PCH to make it a safer environment? Is it changing the look, or is it doing something, or is it striking a certain way, or is it doing something, and you guys have very good pulse on community. Everyone knows you're commissioners. You have input from a lot of people. Sometimes a lot of input from a lot of people. So so I wanted everybody to have the opportunity here first to kind of give you guys some guidance to Caltrans, so they can have a successful program throughout the whole PCA study and the charrettes and everything else too. So keep that in mind when you're kind of going through it.
Keegan?
Thank you. Thank you guys very much for coming. I really appreciate it. My name is Keegan Gibbs, by the way, and I put a lot of thought into how to change the mindset of both visitors and residents in Malibu. And I think that just like what Rob was just saying, it really comes down to the feel of the road, right? And you guys are the professionals, not us, when it comes to the technical aspects and engineering aspects of the highway. But we can obviously point to things that, yeah, maybe the stretch of Winding Way hasn't seen that many fatalities, but I believe that's yet over time, right? And that area, which has a very narrow shoulder and higher visitors every year, it's just going to keep happening. It's going to happen more frequently, right? So even though the data may not show that being on the heat map that big, it's surely going to be a bigger problem down the line. So there's a few things I think. Shoulder width is a really big one. I've spoken to Rob a little bit about this, and the city's looking into potentially a way to create restrictions on shoulder width with parking. For me personally, and from a lot of the discussions I've had over the last month, I think that aesthetic change is a really important key to it, to create that mood, vibe, whatever you want to call it, that mimics other areas with similar speed limits. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with like the Thousand Oaks Boulevard area from, let's say, Canaan-ish all the way towards Westlake. I could send you guys photos sometimes, but basically from Thousand Oaks Boulevard, from Canaan west or north towards Thousand Oaks or Westlake Boulevard, it's 45 miles an hour, 4-lane, 2 each way, with some parking sometimes on the side or no parking. Mixed use, mainly not residential, but it's kind of commercial residential. 45 mile an hour, and the median for the most part is a planted median with trees. And even though it has the same speed limit as PCH, it has a completely different vibe. Even though it's wider than PCH, still much more reduced speed limit. Less residential driveways, still reduced speed limit. I mean, reduced transient speed, I guess.
Medians are considered a linear countermeasure that narrow the feel of the street. And depending what kind of trees you're putting there, tree canopies create a feeling of enclosure as well.
Yeah, and if I could snap my fingers, there's several large portions of PCH that we could, just right now, without even affecting the current width, pulling parking, adding parking, et cetera, that a tree corridors could be effective. I don't think that the almost pervasive what's the median called, where you have a median that you can able to do U-turns on either side from either direction?
Two-way left turn lane.
Two-way left turn lane in the center divider. We have that almost a good portion of our strip. I don't think that's needed, right? Yeah. Especially with the, I just don't think that's needed as much. My request for the discussion and feedback portion of this is maybe give the public and the stakeholders here maybe a few different templates of what is possible. You know, come to the meeting and say, hey, this is what a tree canopy center divider area, and these are the areas that it could potentially be put into place. Because if we just open it up, we're going to get people that with a lot of wacky ideas. Oh, speed bumps, or whatever, roundabouts everywhere. And I don't think it'll be as effective, because you guys have an idea about what can and can't be done. Chris and I spent quite a bit of time with Lee, and he said, oh, well, right here you could narrow these lanes, bolster the shoulders, et cetera. These areas you can't. So I think with just giving the public and the stakeholders some restraints, and the possibility would be really effective.
A menu of countermeasures.
Yeah, there you go. A menu would be effective, and with examples so people can visualize. Oh, wow.
Intending to do that with some pictures as well.
Perfect.
I want to echo what Keegan was saying. Landscape medians is I think the entire community wouldn't just be willing to live with it, I think they'd love it. We've talked about how the median right up to Webb Way is landscaped. The city's responsible for it. The medians that on the other side that go up toward John Tyler are not. But you know, you landscape those medians, you don't even need tree canopies. I mean, trees are going to get into kind of the view shed issue, but just landscaping the median, it communicates something to people. It communicates this is a rural community. This is not a freeway. This is not the 405. This is your neighborhood. And psychologically, I think people respond to that. I know I do. I mean, all the places that Keegan's talking about, I know those roads. I see the landscaping. I feel like I have to behave better. It imposes, right? You do. You see, you're like, I'm in somebody else's town. They've made the effort. You know, you roll through that checklist in your head, and you feel like you behave better. And the more that we landscape this road, the less it looks like a freeway, and the more it looks like our Main Street. And I think that's what we'd like to get to, where people come here and they don't go, oh, it's a thoroughfare. I'm in someone's community, and if they feel that, they'll behave better. A few other things. I'm going to be jumping all over. I'm sorry, I'm not going to go in the order of the four. Like a lot of people, we all wear a lot of different hats here, and I'm glad Cassandra spoke. I'm also president of a local schools nonprofit, AMPS, and we're having a transportation crisis right now because the school district is discontinuing for the first time in like 6 decades the bus service, at least for the beginning of the next school year, and parents are frantic about it. And part of the problem is that because the current delays have been so severe, that's inhibiting people's ability to get their children to school. You heard it from Cassandra. I was emailing with her this morning, so I'm glad she spoke. And we're trying to increase our enrollment, and we're trying to get our own school district. And this is like an existential matter for this community right now. So anything that we can do, either with the current efforts, and I hope they don't go substantially past August, because we really need those roads to be open for transportation to schools. People can't afford to spend 2 hours getting from one end of Malibu to the high school in the mornings and back again. It'll devastate our school. So we need to know that these projects going forward will take our school transportation concerns into account, so that the commutes for people who live at Coastline and Sunset Mesa, who may drive their children or who need the bus to get to Malibu High School, that's about already, with no traffic in the mornings or middling traffic, that's a good 45-minute commute. So you can't add to that. We desperately need that consideration, and for the current work as well. A few other thoughts. For the meetings, keep in mind that a lot of people are on vacation in July. So even for the virtual meeting, your attendance may be spotty. And there is workshop fatigue in this community right now. We've had meetings on school district separation and on public lands use, and people are kind of inundated with a lot of workshops. So there may be some workshop fatigue setting in. Also, we've got an election coming up. We've got a school bond. There are going to be a lot of meetings on that. So there's a lot of stuff happening in this community for the next 6-7 months. So all of that could be a distraction. So I would just say you might need to extend the timetable a little bit just to get the better participation, but to just be mindful of all that. What Michael said, I agree, we need more police presence. That's a county thing. We're gonna have to just get the county supervisors on board with that. Specifically, my priorities for this study, I think anything that saves lives is on the table. And then I think we will look at that and we will say, does this make our roads look more like a main street or like a freeway? I think we want to prioritize. We don't want things that will make PCH look more like a freeway. That means signage and blinking lights, and there are things that will make it look like we're on the 405. And I think we want to stay away from that. Anything that makes it look more rural, more communal, more small town, that's where I think we want to place our priorities. The impacts, I'm willing to accept less parking on the mountainside, on the north side of PCH. I think in addition to speeding, the single most significant contributor to accidents and to deaths is people parking on the north side of PCH and running across and thinking, oh, I can make it, and they often can't. And we've all been caught in traffic behind somebody at Moon Shadows or down by Paradise Cove, where somebody thought, oh, there's no I don't see any cars, and next thing you know, there's a car and they're dead, or there's an accident, or somebody swerves. That is a constant problem, and so the more we can discourage people from parking on the north side of PCH where there's no reason to park on the north side, I think the better. We can live with losing that parking, especially in non-commercial areas. Speed, I think the speed camera thing that we just got resolved in Sacramento is going to make a huge difference. The last few things, there are roads in Malibu that, like Bonds Hall and Winding Way, and there's a whole ton of them where if you don't know it's coming up, it surprises you. And people who don't know this community, they're driving along and they'll be looking for, where's Bonds Hall? Oh, and there it is. And your first instinct is, I gotta slam the brakes on. And that creates fender benders, and that creates traffic. And I don't know if there's a better way to help visitors understand where some of those sudden right-hand turns are off of PCH, but that would be something to think about as well. It's an unusual characteristic of this community that others don't have. It's just those roads, those little canyons, will sneak up on you. So that's something I would urge you to be aware of. And the last point is lighting. We have a dark skies ordinance. We like to keep our communities dark, but lack of lights creates danger. I don't have an answer for that. But I would say if there's whatever way that we can to make the roads safer without necessarily adding loads and loads and loads of lighting, we'd be willing to consider that. But I would not be willing to accept just tons more lighting in areas where the road is dark, because I think the neighborhoods want the roads dark at night. They want that feeling of isolation. And the very last thing, the car clubs, the motorcycles and the speeders who come here at night, middle of the week, anything that we can do that discourages them, that makes this a less desirable location. Obviously that means more policing. I think red light cameras, speed cameras will absolutely discourage that. But if you guys have other solutions that, that send them elsewhere, or just make them deprioritize their to just stop speeding and just stop doing it, that's a problem, and it's been a problem for a long time, and no one's really been able to address it.
Great, a lot of helpful comments there.
When you do your data gathering, of the things that you're going to be looking at, I'm just curious, you'll be also taking some surveys over a certain number of hours of cars on streets turning in and out of certain driveways and how that's backing up. We have that issue with certain restaurants and other properties which then back into PCH, and obviously can have a serious impact, gas stations, restaurants, etc. Depending on the volume of traffic, time of day, and so forth, those can have a high impact on not only fatalities, but just accidents, etc. So I think it's important to gather as much of that as you can within a reasonable period of time. So you look over a few hours and say, well, how many cars turned into this per hour or per X period of time? And I'll give you some pretty valuable information.
Let me ask you if that's something that we can do or plan to do, or
We weren't planning on it. I guess my ask would be is if you have a list of some, give us that list.
It's pretty, we have a pretty good understanding of the ones that are already from
list, then we can start to see what we can do. But it's a combination of business development and the highway. So a lot of these have been there for a long time in the county man things. So it's different circumstances.
Yeah, we found, as we did some counts, we were surprised by certain things. I mean, there was, by Las Flores, there's a gas station there. Doing a count, we found that people were making a left-hand turn into it every 5 to 10 minutes. So there's a lot of people making that. And some of the original Caltrans discussion was to eliminate the ability to turn in, which says people would have to go up another 2.5 miles to U-turn to come back to get in. So, and then there's other areas where that's a concern. So if we can provide some of the data, or you take a look at some of those things, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, we'd like to see that, absolutely.
Thank you.
I just had a comment jumping on Wade, not putting any parking on the mountainside of the highway. Would it be possible to put if we got rid of all the parking, all the way from Topanga to the high school, have it like a two-way bike lane that's curved off, that, like, students could bike to school in an hour, you know, like, it's just something where people can safely have a real bike path, but on the road, but curb protected. Like, we used to always drive to Palisades and bike all the way to the beach to Marina Del Rey, and I just think it's weird that there's nowhere to bike in Malibu. So, I know there's a lot of bicyclists here, and maybe they could even do the marathon or something that way. But anyway, that was my.
I'll second that. The discussions of bike in the history of Malibu, there's been, I mean, as long as I can remember, there's been discussions on how to integrate bikes safer into Malibu because a million reasons. But having that really high on the priority list of design consideration would be great.
All right, good. Whether it's 2 lanes, I mean, we have to see if there's sufficient space. One of the challenges here is there are stretches, as you know, where there's a lot of space and then all of a sudden there's a pinch point. And so how do we kind of deal with that? But whether it's 2-way on one side or 1-way on both sides, definitely be looking into trying to do that.
Those pinch points really correlate with the heat map. This area right here is a really large portion of a really narrow section that comes from fast on both sides.
Some speed. By the way, there is a 2-way bike lane in Santa Barbara. That comes out of Santa Barbara, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty safe. I don't know how you would space that out here. I'm not sure you have the room. You're dealing with a number of feet to work with.
Right. That's the challenge.
It is. You know, pretty much everything's been covered by you and you and you. So we've got that, most of it on the table, but the deal with the car clubs and the speeding and whatever, most of that enforcement is going to be CHP enforcement. So I think we all know that CHP, that's what they do for a living. It's their bread and butter, and they don't give up till they get you. So the more we can do to get CHP out here, more CHP out here, because it's kind of hit and miss right now, will make a huge difference, especially on the weekends. Saturdays and Sundays, early in the morning, West End, it's a drag strip. We've watched cars sit up there and line up next to each other like it's San Fernando Raceway, and just peel them off, and then turn around and come back and do it again. This starts at about daybreak, comes out of Mulholland, comes out of Insolent. And it's like clockwork.
Completely unaware of that.
And these are fast cars. These guys, you know, you're looking at 100, 120 miles an hour. We had a Ferrari break in half up there and throw an inch and a half a mile up the highway. We've had, I mean, we had a Porsche, the engine came out of that and ended up down at Broad Beach Road. So I think looking at the West End, with a keen eye to the fact that it's that wide open stretch that we're talking about, like Michael talked about, and dealing with what's going on up there, because they get out there and they just let it go. Down here,
we let them go up Latigo and Ensenada, and actually up some of the canyons too.
well, they do that too. Doug will tell you about that. Yeah, the West End. I mean, it's down here, like on the weekends, it's too crowded down here, really, to be racing. You have a different form of problem down here than you do up there. Also, when they're talking about the width, pedestrian width, to be able to get down a PCH, a stretch of PCH, Paradise Cove on any given weekend, you'll have people, I think, Brian, is it you that has the picture of the person pulling a water cooler and pushing a baby stroller in the number 2 lane?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is common.
That happens at Matador too.
This is very, very good. Well, Matador is a good example.
And La Costa.
So, you know, this is a problem. And I understand they're going to put a right turn lane in at Paradise Cove, which would be helpful. But once again, you have people out the road there. And they're walking with their back to traffic nonchalantly as if, hey, it's your problem, not mine. And you know, it's going to be a massacre at one point up there. And, you know, I'm going to quote Brian again with his famous quote, but we can't, I mean, what we have here, we have to either legislate or engineer out of the problems we have, because these people are coming and we can't stop them. It's not like we can put a gate up over there and allow only so many in, or have a toll booth, which would be a heck of a great idea. But they're coming. We cannot stop them. Also, the use of social media. As we start to implement things out here, such as more CHP, more whatever, anything that's done should just get blasted on social media so the car clubs, the people out there, start to feel it a little bit. Like, yeah, you know, maybe not this weekend, but let's see what they do next weekend. And start to get that out there and let social media work on our behalf instead of right now, they're putting, these car clubs are putting their routes out and getting people to come and participate. Let's reverse that and get them to see what we're doing to stop that. And there's a very well-known dealer in the valley who backs one of these car clubs, Malibu Autobahn, and they come out here all the time. They have their rallies, so to speak, out here. And we've all seen the deal down at Sunset and PCH with the car that hit the parked cars. Anyway, one last thing, use of the middle lane on PCH. Yes. Terry brought this to my attention tonight when she was driving in, that where we're backed up down there to one lane, people are just zipping down the middle lane. And I had it happen to me yesterday. I had 3 cars go by me in that middle lane. One of them went right through a red light, a crosswalk red light. So in front of where it was right where the gentleman was killed, the painter was killed a couple of years ago. I know that there's probably ways to calm that problem, but then you run into the problem of getting our first responders down the middle of the road when they've got to get through traffic. So it's a yin and a yang, and you know, but it is a problem, and you can see it out there right now. If you were to get in that lane right now out there in that number 1 lane, and with the number 2 closed, they'll come right down the center of the road, and they'll keep on going. They're not turning in a driveway; they're just getting on past everybody. Also, is there some way we can have that middle lane used to open up 2 lanes of traffic when they're working on the inland side of the road? I think we were going to do that at one time.
Isolated so it's a traffic lane as opposed to a...
Is it traffic isolated so it's a traffic lane westbound? So you've got 2 lanes on each side. That would eliminate the problem that we're talking about getting to school and just getting through Malibu.
That's also what they did down with Austin.
They've done it, yeah, exactly, that's right. And they've done it out here intermittently. They've closed the middle, or they've closed the middle to U-turns or whatever and just have westbound traffic or eastbound traffic. And I think that's, I had one last note on here. There's no reason to satisfy those who don't want to slow down. You know, when you said we have to satisfy, we're going to look at satisfying everybody. That's the one group I don't want to satisfy. I don't think there's any reason to satisfy that group that wants to speed on the highway. So.
Yeah, and I do anticipate a cultural resistance to
absolutely
change, and that's just going to be inevitable. And I think that, you know, and there's going to be, as you said, there's going to be compromises here. Yeah, if say we make a really large change here at PCH in terms of the aesthetic and putting planters down the middle, trees, etc., that's a long construction time. But in my point of view, that's something that people will have to swallow, like people that are driving to school, etc., and just for the greater good, because it's gone too long.
Hi. I appreciate you guys being here and having this discussion with us. It's definitely something that I think is on our community's minds. I agree with what everybody said here, and most of the comments I was going to say has been brought up. But I was definitely going to say that slowing down. I think your original comments about, you know, what it's going to look like for us. I would think that most locals, I mean, I would rather go slower and know I'm going to get there than to not get there, because especially during the summer, there's an accident every day and you're not going to get there. So if it's a consistent 30 miles an hour, but you're going to get there, I think everybody, that'd be great. No one gets hurt, and you know you'll get to your destination. It might take 20 minutes, 30 minutes longer, but I think that the community would benefit and appreciate it, if not from the beginning, over time. I was just curious if the striping has helped. If that's, you know, there's a bunch of things that you've done recently, and I was just curious if you guys have seen results from it.
From the director's order.
In terms of the striping with the optical speed bars.
Yeah.
So I know I can't see everybody over
And also what did you call it? that?
So the optical speed bars, the perpendicular lines to the lanes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gotten some comments from some of the local residents. Merrill May's very outspoken and he likes them. He does think they have an impact. We have not come up to do speed surveys in that area. Since we put them up, we're holding back to let the enforcement side also work, bring some speeds down. We did have a comment last week, PCH task force meeting though, from a cyclist that complained that he didn't care for him because it gives him a bumpier ride. So we're, this is the trade-off discussion we need to have. We are getting some feedback from people that are positive that they can see him. We try to put the intent is put them in before a curve so people have a warning to slow down because of the speed issues up
Are they on the shoulder as well, or just in the lane?
They're just in the lane.
So the cyclist should be fine.
Well, when they come out the shoulder, they're in the lane. So,
I didn't think they were shoulder.
Yeah.
So that's where they're at. So that's what we're trying to do. So.
Also what are the sticks that go down?
Oh, channelizers or the quick curves? The ones that are the wide paddles.
The long paddles that
The
go
long
down.
ones that are wide.
Are you guys seeing those preventing?
Yeah,
U-turns?
I've had anecdotal comments from people of, it makes them feel like the road is narrow. They're right up against it. It's like, there's something right there.
Will you guys do a study?
What's that?
Will you guys do any kind of a study to see if those are
We
producing?
can come back out. We didn't do pre-studies because we were asked to, what are things you think you need? We did the ride along with the sheriff and with Chris and Keegan. It was something they asked for. We saw benefits previously with people making illegal left turns and U-turns everywhere in different areas. They had positive effects, and so it made sense with the ask and looking at field conditions. We felt we should get it in, so we just went ahead and did it. We didn't want to wait to study it because if I waited to study it, I'd still be studying it. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, over time, crash data and speed data will come in, be able to compare before and after that. But
The other thing that I think I'm consistently hearing is police presence. Because I think the minute a couple tickets, within an hour, which I see the police, I think locals know where they are. I mean, if you're getting a ticket, there's a couple officers who just know where they are. So I would imagine that the people getting tickets are people that do not know where they are. And people are speeding. And so I think that having more police presence would prevent a lot of what we're talking about. The drag racing, all that kind of.
We should have at least 3 cars.
It's all moving around, because I think that would prevent people from noise and all the things that we suffer from. The locals I don't think are doing the majority of, the challenging things on PCH. The other thing I was gonna say, I know that there was just a big divider just put in, I think kind of by the Jewish Center, and I don't see any trees. It looks like they did block all of it. I was wondering if they were. Yeah, and I know on San Vicente, they do have big trees there, but it is really, feel like you're driving through a neighborhood, which is nice, which, when it feels barren, people just start speeding. And that was an area they just saw.
no friction.
Right, and they just did all this work, and they didn't really implement any of those opportunities. I think that was it for me. I think we have a bunch of things coming up that we've discussed that sound, monitoring people's speed, that sounds like it's gonna be helpful too.
Okay, so I have a few things here. So a couple of things that you need to make sure to look at is the feeder roads that feed to us, whether it be Topanga, Malibu Canyon, or Canaan, that drop off people avoiding the 101 and the 405 connection and going to the west side. They add a lot of traffic to our area because when those roads are closed, the highway is pretty open. So they're a big factor in all this. The second thing is pedestrians. They're underpasses possibly, whether it be at the Bridge or Duna Corral, which I think has one, but at Trancas and other places, there should be availability for the pedestrians to go under the road rather than having to cross the road. I think that would help a lot. The parking, I'm all for eliminating parking. Maybe you guys have a better connection with Coastal Commission to get them to okay it. If Coastal Commission will okay it, and maybe the city and Caltrans can put pressure on them, then certainly eliminate some parking to make it a safer road for sure. the Zuma entrance and realignment in the bridge there. So the Zuma entrance is pathetic at this point in time. It's a huge, I don't know, is it 800 spots or something like that? There's a one, like probably 30-foot at the most turn lane to get in there. It automatically is a big problem to get in there because they no longer are, and I know that Beaches and Harbors is partly responsible for that, but they won't allow you to go under the bridge now because there's some water in there or something. So that's a big zone where you get a lot of people that are, not everybody goes to Zuma Beach from the westbound, from the westbound side. The people, when they're leaving the beach, they have to go do a turn with no signals or anything to get across to go anywhere to the west of Zuma Beach, or if they're going to go back up to Ventura or wherever they came from. So that's a critical point right there. I'm all for the center dividers. I think they work pretty good. All the new ones that you put up are at Cavalieri and the other areas. I think they're great. I think at first there was a little bit of a mistake with the height of some of them and people couldn't see, but I think that's been rectified and that's pretty good with the different size ones that you use, so I think that's a very positive thing. I think that at some point we really should look at, especially down here at the east end, some limiting U-turns to some sort of designated area where they can do it, so that it's not just wide open the whole way, just make a U-turn wherever you feel like it, because people are racing to get parking spots, whatever, which actually leads me to my next one, which is that you really need to focus on all the different beach areas, because that's where we have our traffic. And it's not just summertime, it's year-round now, just like fire season, it's beach season all the time. So that's like a critical area where, and I don't believe that there's any beach entrance that I can think of that has a signal anywhere near it, and a few have crosswalks, but they're not really convenient to where the actual beach entrance is. You know, you have to walk down a long ways and people will just go straight across. Let's see. And then Chris touched on this a little bit, but like when you're doing construction or really high traffic times, I know that in Washington, D.C., the road into Washington, D.C. in the morning, they have 3 lanes going in, and then in the afternoon, they have these little things almost like they stick in the ground, and they just move it to the other side, and then it's 3 lanes getting out of Washington, D.C. So if there's any way to either keep it so, because it's always getting down to 1 lane that causes a lot of the friction, as you would say. And I would claim it'd be a lot more friction. I'd say it's a clog. But so any way to open that up in a certain way. And yeah, Chris kind of embellished my saying a little bit. I mean, my saying basically is that, and I was born and raised here. My family's been here since the 1940s. The people are coming. We can't stop them. And it's not really our job to stop them, so we better plan for them. You know, that's really what it comes down to, because there's more people in the general area around here than some countries. So, you know, I think there's more people in LA than there is in Australia. So, we just have to plan for that. So, hopefully, this is a good start, and we can sort of find those little areas that are problematic. But your heat map is very, very good as far as where the problem issues are. Definitely.
Yes.
Taking off from where Keegan and Wade said about having medians, if we have in eastern Malibu where we've really got a challenge with the width of the road and trying to put in parking and trying to put in a bike lane and worrying about pedestrian, if we put, instead of that center lane, if we put a smaller median in there, that would give us more room for both the 2 lanes and for some parking and for potential bike lane. Then now you have to figure out where you're going to allow people to do a U-turn, and that's challenging, I know. But then as you go out towards western Malibu, as Keegan said, talking about the Thousand Oaks, nice big median strip. You've got the room to do that out beyond Pepperdine. And, you know, you don't have the demands in most places for parking unless they're going to look at the waterfall or Paradise Cove. But in general, you have room. And maybe that will slow down, because somebody described it, it gets to be a raceway out there. We don't want that, but with a nice wide median, with trees, it would completely change the character. And I think that if we're gonna really do something, you know, unless we can get great enforcement, and I just don't see that happening, but having those medians and putting trees where you can, it would change the character. It would change, it'd be a radical change, which is, I think, what we really need. So I'd encourage you to, and I would think that in eastern Malibu, having a narrower median, that could be done fairly quickly. And maybe you do need the, I don't know, if those are ballards, whatever those plastic things are that.
Quicker.
Okay, thank you. Maybe that's what we need. And that could be done quickly. I know it's gonna take planning and design to do the wider ones more to the west. But if we don't do that, I think we're just chipping away little by little.
One thing I've noticed here today, we're all concentrating on, I think, on the people that many of us think are idiots, the people that come out on weekends and they're all crazy. It's not quite that bad, but
they leave their brain behind.
Yeah, we're not really thinking about the people who commute into Los Angeles every morning, which is probably 20, 30, 40% of the population. There almost never, and I did it for 25 years to downtown LA, there almost never is this crazy conduct you're talking about. Yes, the residents aren't any better than anybody else in terms of their sanity, but during that time period, during the commuting period, it's pretty quiet. Most people obey the rules, and they just want to get to town and get to their jobs on time. I'm not talking about when construction is going on. I mean, no one is like that. Remember, we're all talking about the weekend traffic. That's the primary problem. One of the things that Brian mentioned, and I've noticed also, big time, that Zuma Beach, well, there's two things we need to worry about in the western end. Paradise Cove and Zuma Beach, those are the only two big public access ways that exist out there. Zuma Beach is a fatality waiting to happen. It's more than 30 feet, it's about 5 cars that they took away, you guys took away by accident, I think, the option of going through the underpass, making them through the big cloverleaf type thing where there's a sign there that says entrance. It's been flooded ever since the rains, and particularly ever since Caltrans finished the construction work down there to clear all the debris out of there. I don't know if they did it on purpose or not, but they opened up a channel that allows the roadway now to be flooded. It's flooded now. The water flow doesn't justify it. That's got to get fixed, and it's got to get fixed. Something's got to happen soon. That's about all I have to say. I think we do need to differentiate between these. The big problem is really weekend and transients. The residents aren't really, for once, a big part of the problem. I think during rush hour commuter traffic, we don't have a big problem, but we do need to provide for those and make sure that we don't do something that is so restrictive that the people start complaining about not being able to get to work on time in the morning.
Hey, Don, I can address the underpass, because I've been following that thing for several years, if not more. The Caltrans did a great job of cleaning it out. What they did was they actually moved the water back into its proper channel, which was the third opening over. There's 3 openings underneath there. When we were kids, we played in that creek. I mean, it was the third channel. The middle channel was, was just there. A little bit of overflow in it. The channel where the roadway is, what happened is over time, and I think it's a beaches and harbors issue anyway, over time, they just kept pushing the dirt off the roadway and over into that third channel over there, and they changed the course of the creek, so now it went on the road. Okay, so now they've changed it back. the water's back in the third channel, the middle one has some dirt in it, and the water you're seeing on the road now is seeping up out of the ground. It's an artesian well. I walked through there, it's about 3 inches of water back there now, and it just continues to be 3 inches of water because it's passing through. But it's.
I was there 2 hours ago. I looked at it.
Well, I was there a couple days ago.
The water is really still in the second channel. The other one's, you can't see it if it's there. It's got to be gone.
You're talking about right along the road, right? That little thing along the road. That's coming out of the ground and back.
Maybe so.
Pardon me?
Can you pump the water?
Just call Richards and Harbors and ask them to, would you? What's that? I just wanted to correct that. Okay.
What other questions do you have for us in terms of these 4 things? Like,
Okay.
you know.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to go ahead?
No, go ahead.
So Lee Haber and I have been working tirelessly for I don't know how many months now, coming up with all kinds of different ideas and things that we can do in the corridor, kind of fixing PCH, addressing all of the recommendations on the 2015 PCH safety study. So kind of want to have them bring up and come up here and kind of discuss some of the ideas that we were kind of talking about and hear from him kind of the things that are possible or potentially possible to kind of do and start getting some ideas of what you guys can think of to bring at the future meetings.
So, as Rob said, we've been really working this, and first road safety audit we did at the end of November. One item we talked about was the U-turn situation. We were looking at the areas around Malibu Pier where you've got pedestrian crossings and people can make U-turns in there, the signals, and you have a crosswalk. And so there's some options. There's different things known as R-cuts where you put up signals. There's signals specifically for people to make a right turn out on a roadway. They go a certain distance and then they make it. At the signal, that's where they make their U-turn. It's just signals for people to go down the roadway and make a U-turn. So one option Rob and I were talking about was could we come up with a design to use that median space, shut down that 2-way left turn lane through different areas, make it where people come out, they have to make a right to go northbound or southbound on the roadway, go to one of those signalized areas to make the U-turn. And we could try to come up with options through there where we would have lighting limited there at that location and crosswalks in there too with some of the space because we're bringing we have the ability with signals there to perhaps combine these. I think that's some of the issues. The city's working on a project, moon shadows. There's just things where you put in, I say you, society as a whole has put in a bus stop on one side of the roadway. There's no sidewalk there. There's no crosswalk for a long distance. And so people decide, well, I want to go there. Looks good. They go for it and somebody comes speeding around a corner. So that's one option. We've been looking at some different options and I think part of what we want to do, had a meeting with Marlon and some consultants last week about demonstration projects. And Ryan and I were talking a little bit about it up at Route 23 Decker Road, northern area. The volumes really drop off. We think that could be a good area to try a roundabout. I say try. Our issue is sometimes with the time it takes us to go through a project development process and we anchor things in, we get things down in concrete and that gets really expensive. And so there's some options with maybe we can try a demonstration or a pilot and we use lower cost materials. We put it out and try it for a number of months, get community feedback and see how that would work. That's one option we've been talking about. Another one was the area through the pier area. When the agency secretary visited, we know we got some wider lanes in there. The median's a little bit wider. Could we narrow those lanes down, get some extra space on the outside, get some bike lanes through there? Could we do some sort of a change on the 2-way left turn lane where it's a double yellow so your emergency vehicles can get through there? And if people are speeding, that's a problem. Maybe we can come up with a low curb that the emergency vehicles can mount. Perhaps that would impede the drivers that decide they're going to floor it. I've been passed on my trips up here multiple times. I've had people pass on that 2-way left turn lane going like crazy bat out of hell. They're just going to go. They don't care about others. And so some things we can do there. And that's what I'm seeing with some of the things here. So that's some of the stuff Rob and I were looking at. The other thing I would add is the radar speed feedback signs that we're working on. They do have the ability to store data, so I'm thinking, Rob, we need to have a discussion probably with your signal sync as to maybe some ways to set up communication channels for the areas further north. That would give data to the law enforcement agencies, then they can look and see when the speeds are problematic and then target enforcement during that period too. Those are some additional options with some of the technology out there, but it does take the technology going in, maintaining the technology, and then putting staff on pulling the data and analyzing the data. And I think that's where a lot of people forget is if we set this up, there's a thought process, well, you just do it. It's not that simple. Some of the software is specialized, you've got to get people into it, and they got to stay on it longer term to get efficient. So, I don't know, Rob, were there other things you could think of that we've talked about that I may have missed? I mean, we talked about maybe back-end parking stalls at the northern areas. We've talked about maybe roundabouts at some of the beach entrances.
Yeah, we talked about shoulder widths and how we can operate bike lanes. And it's a myriad of things that we're kind of going through and looking at everything we can kind of like look at and options we can do to kind of improve safety out here.
Yeah. And then no parking zones. Our maintenance crews, they're stretched really thin. Some of the stuff we put in, man, maintenance guy I feel for him is going, Lee, now I've got to maintain that. We've added that to my inventory. No parking zones. We've got an area by Duke's Restaurant. There were no parking signs there years ago. They seem to have grown legs and walked off. We have other areas of the highway where we put in no parking signs and they're gone. And then in other areas we don't want it, but we say no, that's open for parking, and all of a sudden no parking signs appear. So we've got some challenges out there. It's a large stretch of roadway. Our office is downtown LA. The maintenance crews are closer. We get out here, but we need the help on doing it. We need to hear from you. There's some different things we could do. We're working with Rob. I want to come up with some ways maybe we can do some better markings on the pavement for the no parking zone. So if the signs disappear, it's not an item on our maintenance crews. Putting the speed limits on the pavement, you know, there was back and forth on that. You know, yet at the same time while we were pushing it to go forward in the design for the director's order, we got a call from the sheriff and he goes, hey, one of our speed limit signs by the Chevron station out here at Webb Way, it was down. Someone had actually taken it down, graffitied all over it, and now there's no speed limit sign. So, you know, putting the markings on the pavement coupled with the signs, I think, you know, it's a belt and suspenders type of thing. It's there, so if the sign gets torn down or it gets blocked by overgrowth, and that was the other thing I've noticed, there's a lot of growth on the side of the roadway and the signs start getting blocked. And so getting out and trimming that's going to be a challenge. We need to find a way to do that. And then the other thing, Rob, I think we've got to work on is figuring out a way we can better mark our right-of-way lines so our crews know where to maintain. Bonzall is one of them. I think Chris and Keegan, we went up there and they had to go through and make a right turn out of there onto the highway. Yeah. And we got to figure out how to get that wall trimmed, all that wall of shrubbery trimmed back. But the issue is it on private property? Is it in our right-of-way? If it's in, some of it's in our right-of-way and we trim it, are we going to get a problem with the property owner now if we kill the plant growth and those sorts of things? So those are some of the conflicts we have with addresses.
I just had a question. After the tragedy with the Pepperdine girls, the city council meetings, there were 2 organizations who brought redesigns of PCH. Did you guys get those and analyze those?
So, the one gentleman who's an architect had some different ideas. We've taken those in. As Ryan talked about, part of our problem is we're kind of pinned in between a bluff and the ocean, or we got houses on both sides, and so it's space. And some of the schematics look great, but if we start really looking at the right-of-way space we've got in the pavement, do we have it? And we don't in some locations. We're going to continue to look at it. We pulled back up the gentleman's drawings. I don't know the exact 2 people that had it. I didn't get those from the task force. I got them through others. So if you have the contacts for those people, I know we want to get them. You've got the contacts for the 3 people planned that are going to be really leading this effort. Get those in early. That way we can look at it.
So real quick, I did give those plans over to the planning group, and I purposely didn't send it over to Lee. No, I'm just kidding. I'll send you a copy. Yeah. But yeah, they have a copy. They're looking at evaluating kind of, so they're going to bring that as probably like an item in their tool belt to kind of see if they can kind of do that too. So they have that. They're looking at that and
Do you have the contacts for those people?
I think it's just on that
I
one
think
on there.
I know the guy that's the architect that had put some
Yeah,
good
they can
graphics
invite him to
together.
the workshop.
So, yeah, I can get that information. Okay.
Yeah, but no, we want to get that stuff. And I think the options would be too, is if we can do narrowing that median in some locations and then maybe widening it back out, where we need to put in what I would call a U-turn pocket. The challenge is going to be sizing that U-turn pocket, because we really don't know what the demand is, and then people have got to be willing to wait and go there. And that's the other side, is when we have the challenges at Big Rock, we got to make changes there. When we have the closures on Topanga, our construction guys were trying to deal with it. We were making changes in the late afternoon, and they were doing it overnight. But there were a lot of complaints flying in, and it's a hard balancing act with different things out there, especially with all the residents along the roadway. That's the other part.
I have maybe a suggestion, and is that our community is fairly small, and I think that you can, through this group and maybe some of the other working groups, like the say PCH people, the PCH task force, I think you could identify maybe like a stakeholder group that can be almost like a liaison between you guys, because when it comes down to the projects actually happening, people may have misperceptions, and they could go to that group first who actually knows. It was incredibly informative to go on the ride along with you, right? Oh wow, I didn't know that's how you could do a U-turn, or why, those little speed things, right? I learned a ton in 2 hours. Instead of, I could explain misperceptions or dispel misperceptions much easier than you guys getting inundated with emails that don't really make sense.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to make sure folks know is our project development process, it can take us upwards of 7 or 8 years to get a project through. In fact, Marlon knows I worked on one of those, the early part of its environmental document phase. And just getting through the environmental document phase took us 6 years. That was in the district, okay? So these things can take a while. So I think sometimes what I'd like to do is ask the community if you guys can find a way to work with us and demonstrate and pilot some stuff. I think in some ways that's going to be our best bet, but that is a unique method. I'm looking at Marlon because he knows it can be challenging within the department to do it, because we take risks with that. There could be tort liability risks for us and exposure, so we have to cover stuff. The state's the deep pockets, and we need to watch that side of it too. And then the northern section where the speeds are higher, I hear that. I want to find a way to help bring that down. But it's a wide roadway. It's been set up. If we can do things there, narrow those two-way left turn lanes out, or take them out in some stretches and do some different things, I think we've got some opportunities. But the residents up in that area, we need buy-in and community support for that too, because it gets hard if we've got a few people in that area that are impacted and they're letting us have it. We need to hear from the group. And so that's why Ryan's talking about, hey, if you want to try this, there are trade-offs. So, and that's what we got to work through. So.
Yeah, and to your question, we are relying to a large degree on the city to keep us connected with any stakeholder groups. And we'd like to get them to come to the workshops. So that would be really important that we hear from them. And we want to ask them questions like you had asked, do we have any questions for you? And I do have a few questions for you, and the same kind of questions I want to bring to the stakeholders. For example, we've talked a little bit about medians and removing the two-way left turn lanes. So some areas you've got driveways on the south side, on the beach side, that people are turning into. Would they be willing to do something where we direct them further up and they do a U-turn to come into their driveway? I mean,
I think my understanding is most of the people that actually live in those houses have seen so many fatal accidents and so much trauma by living there for 30 years, they're willing to see whatever. The rest of the people, it's their second home, and a lot of those houses, especially in the Carbon stretch, they're empty. And you don't see many cars turning in and out of those driveways.
Okay, well, that's interesting. A couple other questions. You'd mentioned the lighting and the dark sky ordinance. What would you think about more lighting sort of in the central part, maybe between Carbon and the pier?
It has.
It has.
It has.
Is it sufficient?
I think what you could do is incidental lighting, like what, meaning like lighting that's in, like landscape lighting as opposed to flood lighting. So think about it like that, where it's lighting that lights up features so you can see the shape of the road, but it's not
Scale
light that's,
lighting.
it's not light that you can read a book
It's
in
an
the middle.
ordinance, so we wouldn't really have the
Well,
ability to have a decision on that.
It's, no, it's street lights are exempt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're exempt.
Oh,
Streetlights are exempt.
So, I would recommend, just like what Lee was saying, is like those areas where you have intersections and turns, and when you're directing people to make those turning movements, especially U-turns, that's where you want to have it lit, because that's where you have high congestion of pedestrians and vehicles making those maneuvers where you need the light and see it. So,
I mean,
so beyond that, it's,
yeah, I think in the commercial stretch right there by the pier, that's not typically where the lighting problem is. The areas where it gets dark and where because it's dark, people run across the road and no one sees them, that's closer. That's like Paradise
Pepperdine
Hill.
West.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's west of Pepperdine. It's especially down, I mean, once you get down by Decker, I mean, it's pitch black and people can easily get hit. Those are the areas where that's an issue.
Let me ask you another question that could address that and all of these other things. We're looking at traffic volumes on the west end. And there's the question is, do we really need 4 lanes, or can we get by with 2 lanes out there? If we could get by with 2 lanes, there's a whole lot of things we could do to make things safer.
That's been taking PCH back to Roosevelt Highway era in the 1930s. I don't think that would
I
fly.
mean, what do y'all?
Wade's right, it won't work.
I think you have too big a fire danger here.
Yeah.
Well, okay,
You've got to have evacuation routes.
so that's a great, I'm glad you brought that up. So, yes, exactly. If we do some things where it's paved, but the striping is narrower, and maybe you change it, you shift the roadway. Wow, in the discussion, I know Avi saw this with the sheriff from a road safety audit, he had thought of maybe we could do diagonal parking or, pull-in parking. And I'm thinking, I've seen diagonals where people can back into a parking spot. They go beyond, they back in. When they're pulling out, they look left, it's easier to see that way. Maybe we can do some shifts, do some things, and where I'm going with it is, because of the evacuation stuff, I want to keep the pavement open, okay? I don't want to have a problem where we collectively do something and it's like, oh my God, what did we do later, right, when we got to evacuate? I don't want to have that. So what could we do out there? Could we do something like that and we keep the pavement width, and then if you've got to have emergency services and evacuation, it's just, you don't park, but you've got the pavement to move 2 lanes, 3 lanes of traffic outbound or something. I'm thinking out loud with you
No,
guys.
it's good.
because
I like the creativity of it, but again, that is literally the way it was in the 1930s. If you look at historical, but the reason they changed it was because the volume of cars, the population, just made that impractical. And that's when Roosevelt Highway became PCH. And it was reconfigured and all of that went away. But I mean, that is literally the way it was 90 years ago. I don't see the community buying into that.
But I think that we have to be open. And
Sure,
and
sure.
every single change that we're potentially
No,
going to
this
make.
dialogue is important.
Every
I
single
agree.
change we're potentially going to make, whether it's putting a street light, somebody's going to project it, and if we just listen to Wade every time, then we may not get anything done.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
no, but I mean, as an example, we were talking earlier this month, we had a joint meeting, right? And it was about, and we were talking about a crosswalk, right? It was a crosswalk. So this whole group couldn't agree with anything, so we couldn't even pass it. So, good luck for you. But we couldn't agree on a crosswalk stoplight at Carbon, and it wouldn't pass because we couldn't get enough people on board. I think that the public safety was on it, and you guys were against it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I get an override right?
Yeah.
And, it's an important dialogue. I mean, we want to get all the ideas.
Present it all. Present it all.
I have a question, since we're talking about the west end, and you were talking about the 2-way left turn lane going on forever out there. Yeah. When you're talking about elimination of that in some way, shape, or form, does that then widen the road? Or are you talking about putting something in its place? Oh, so what would you be? So I think this is where Ryan and I were talking about, there's different software tools, but even just
drawing something up. So, I don't know, from my standpoint, I'm trying to think roughly what the roadway width is out there, but an option could be no parking on the right side, take out narrow the two-way left turn lane down, shift traffic over to the right, put a bike lane there, shift them over, allow more parking on the left. If we can get the sheriff's idea to work where maybe they can back in and have a bike lane, we take that space. And then what's gonna get crazy though is we're gonna have a point where we're gonna have an intersection where we need to allow U-turns. Now we're gonna have to stop that, widen the roadway back out, but it changes the dynamic too, because I don't have a long straightaway that I'm looking at like, the lines go on forever, let me just floor it through here. It's more like, okay, I've got to pay attention, the road line changes on me, there's variation. That could do some things, but we have to lay it out on paper. We've got to see, there's going to be challenges with that. I'm not going to lie to you. Part of our problem is the right-of-way. The right-of-way restrictions and some of the issues with knowing where the right-of-way lines are. It's old land survey work and it's historical research.
Could I ask, are there any other communities that have comparable challenges that you've dealt with?
That I've dealt with? Are there others that have challenges? Yeah, I talked with colleagues up in Northern California and the Eureka area, and they're having challenges with trying
But similar to this, I mean, are we, how unique are we, I guess?
Laguna.
Kind of, but different.
Yeah.
You're unique. I think the issue is we need to lay out some options and explore it and talk about trade-offs openly and just be open-minded, because if it's like, no, you can't do this here, okay, what am I gonna say? If you shut down the idea before we get it out there, people aren't gonna.
I mean, I'm just thinking of, you know, how many of these ideas are we the test case for, or are there cases where if you're bringing something and we go, oh, that sounds sketchy, no, we tried it here and it was great, and we can then kind of use that, we can reference that.
I've seen stuff in national research where there's been back-end parking done in different areas where it's more of a tourist-type community with some businesses or other things, and they've done that, and they've had some positive results, but there's always trade-offs. We think it's gonna work. Yeah, this works really well in this regard, but sometimes we have issues here.
Most of the countermeasures have been well researched.
I just think it's more helpful if you know, you give us an idea and you go, and here's an example of it in the real world, than for us to try to kind of wrap our heads around it in theory.
And I've had people ask me, can you do speed tables? Can you do speed bumps on PCH? And it's like, well, those are intended for volumes that are under 6,000 vehicles a day. Upward side is 9,000. The low section up by Decker in that area is at least, what, 12, 16,000?
I've seen it.
It's not really there. And then I've had discussions where I've had frank discussions with emergency responders, and they're like, they are a pain for us. They get in the way, they slow us down. Please don't do it. And so, and I appreciate those conversations, because I have those I've talked to CHP officers on the side of the road. Chris and I talked to a CHP officer on a Saturday when they were doing enforcement in a construction zone. And got him to mark double fine zone, like we're out. But he shared challenges they have on the double fine zone.
Seattle has used speed tables in the form of raised crosswalks, which is essentially the same thing, in areas where they've got 15 to 20,000. I could see trying those maybe again in the central areas near the pier, one or two of those as in a crosswalk.
And a 45 mile an hour zone.
We would hope that maybe that central area, we could put enough friction in there, maybe it won't be a 45 mile an hour zone.
But there's the light synchronization project, which is going to adjust a lot of that too.
If you want to make, and I've heard from different people, including Rob, that there is some sentiment that you would like that center part of Malibu to become more like a main street, like a boulevard, and less like a highway.
Yeah.
And if we do that, I think we could bring the speeds down and, start to do more things like that.
You know, I mean, I'm opposite. I think there's someone else here probably, Dawn, also. I don't feel like 45 and 50 in Malibu is too fast. I think the issue is that nobody drives that speed.
Yeah,
We
right.
all go much higher. So, I mean, that's where I come out on it, because I had to go to high school every day in Santa Monica. There was no high school out here. And it was traffic every day, or it was just like, we've been driving the highway our whole lives, but it is way more pervasive now as far as people just disobeying the speed limit.
And then part of that question comes back to the character of that area. Again, if you want to change the character of it to become more like, a boulevard, a main street, a central part of town, that people feel like they can cross the street from one side to the other, go to the restaurant on the other side of the street or to the pier without taking their life in their own hands. Changing the character, so it's a question of both safety and, again, character of the street. And we can address the safety issue by changing the character.
And we are kind of in a chicken and an egg situation too, because some of our standards are based upon speed of the roadway. So if people are speeding and going over it, and we're doing a speed zone study, we come out, we get higher readings. With the 85th percentile rule currently, we can only take certain reductions, which could mean a higher speed limit.
That's statutory?
It happened on regulations.
They raised it 5 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So there's challenges with this, and that's why I've been talking with Marlon about getting support and talking with Rob about it. We want to try and demonstrate, do some demonstration stuff, but we need a change. We need the support to do a demo of some things where we try it. And if it doesn't work, we don't have people losing their minds on us and just saying, just work with us and okay, let's go tear it out. But it's going to mean we put money in to do something, and then if we tear it out, we get flack for wasting money at times, and sometimes you've got to try something to see if it's going to work. And that's the challenge we're in. So I want to push some things, but we have criteria and it's speed-based. And it's hard because if we put out objects down the middle of the highway, trees, once we get above a certain speed and they get above a certain diameter, they're now considered a fixed object, and we've got a tort liability side issue too. So people say, well, why can't you put this out there? Well, the speed limit's 55. I have these great rules concerning clear recovery zones, keeping things clear, there's fixed objects and such. I put them out there, I get in trouble, then we have a tort liability situation.
Let me ask you a question. If, on a scale of 1 to 10, how aggressive of measures would you like to see, with 10 being a really aggressive measure, or we're just going to throw the whole kitchen sink and slow everything down and tame it, with 5 being kind of modest things, medium, and 1, we don't really want to change much of anything. Where do you think most of you are?
Start with 5 and work towards 10.
You got to consider what part of the highway too.
Yeah,
It's a lot different.
And that's what he's worked on with the typology, and I love it, because it's like, there's different.
Well, let's take the central area, with the...
I'd like to see everything you come up with. I mean, don't self-censor. I mean, we may hate it, or we may love it, the community might hate it, we'd love it. I mean, you're gonna get all kinds of reactions, but I think everybody wants to see every option.
So you're closer to the 10?
Well,
I want to see the options.
Yeah.
I think the concept too of putting in temporary things. I mean, like say the carp or the La Costa stretch, right, which is probably the highest.
Which way is that?
Where the kids got killed.
Yeah, Las Flores to Carbon King, that stretch right there, which is the highest on the heat map, pretty much. I mean, just what if putting a tree line or some sort of landscaping, temporary landscaping, you can get either fake trees or real trees that are in 24 pots, whatever, thrown down there, new quick curbs that are temporary, and just see what happens in terms of the speed feedback, the ability for residents to be able to make U-turns. I mean, I think we're all in favor of those things, and we can be advocates for you to tell the community, hey, this is temporary, this is us trying things out. It's like,
I think Wade nailed it, though. I think we really want to see everything that you can possibly put out there, and maybe that brings up something in our minds too.
Right.
Maybe
Right.
trips something that we can add to it.
While you're doing the crashes on PCH, do you have one of these exclusively for bicycles?
That could be done. So this is from what's called TIMS data, a Transportation Injury Mapping System. It's an online website from UC Berkeley where you can sort the data in different ways. This was sorted for all crashes, but you can sort it for bicycle crashes, you can sort it for injury and fatality and
Time of day?
Pedestrians?
time of day. There's a lot of ways of sorting that data.
Pedestrians?
I think it'd be good if we could see where the bicycle crashes, because most bicycle crashes that involve a vehicle are pretty serious.
Alex is going to be our
That'd be great.
He's the data cruncher?
he's going to be our challenge.
Yes.
And we're going to look at Lee's group as well, and we do a lot of crash analysis.
But I want to go back to what Keegan was saying, that if we had a demonstration project of a median in eastern central Malibu, maybe it's just plastic blocks, I don't know what you all would use, and, you know, fake bushes. But having that would allow the community to see what could be done. And you probably only need to do it for a mile or so. And man, that's kind of on the 10 on your scale. But it's also, you know, I think something that this group would support, get behind, and then people would go, wow, you guys are actually doing something.
So maybe if we can't get to certain things like box planners or other stuff, but maybe I'm gonna throw out bolt down channelizers, because we can pull a bolt out pretty easily, right? Bolt it into the pavement. There's some that can take the speed hits. It's gonna maybe do some damage, but in a way, if we narrowed it down and your emergency responders have to go through there, you know, the fire truck can just go on down. CHP or PD can go through it, maybe just bam, 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 and you're hearing that for a period of time, but there's devices that can take a lot of hits at 70 miles an hour, tends to intimidate the regular driver out of doing it, but emergency responders could go through, and that's the thing Rob and I have talked about too, is how do we do it in a way where there's flexibility for the community.
You're already doing
You're talking about
it.
quick
You're already
curve?
doing it with those.
Not talking quick curve.
What do you channel, what's the difference?
So, just the tubular ones, the tubular channelizers, just a straight tube.
Oh,
They have a
candlesticks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying you couldn't do temporary for trees and planters?
Not, with the 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, I get into so many issues with the tort liability situation, and I'm running stuff. If we do bolt down channelizers, if we did some smaller bolt down curbs, Rob and I were talking about
There's
some
so many
things.
areas that are 45.
I know.
That have trees.
And that's my, well, state highway system or local?
Right, local.
That, okay.
So what is the speed limit for landscaping?
Depending upon what's out there, 35 to 40.
And how big is a tree allowed to get?
Well, technically, per the regs, it's supposed to be a 4-inch diameter, which is not that big. And that creates some challenges. And I know you were talking about San Vicente. I used to ride my bike down San Vicente when I went to UCLA. In that area on the west side, I think it used to have a trolley line down that area that's now the landscape median. So, yeah. So, I mean, that's why they got the width and it was so wide, was they just took out the train tracks and put in the grass and the trees.
Well, that's a good question, just about the tort liability part. Indulge me for going into a very difficult place, but how, I mean, is that something that's worth even talking about changing legislatively, lobbying to get you more leeway?
I think that's going to be a
big lift.
Yeah, yeah. And I've talked with a few folks about it. I think it's going to be a big lift. There's issues on that, and I don't really want to go for a long period. I'm not an attorney. I know enough on it that the problems our team has dealing with it. I've been through a number of lawsuits on certain things our staff's had to go in. It's tough. We're working with our legal team and engineering judgment, application, standards.
But is it exclusively a speed limit based?
Many of the things are speed based and what we're putting in, because we're looking at a lot of this design standards that have been set up over the years, and that sets up kind of a standard of care or approach thing. So what Ryan and we're talking about is if we can try some things on a demonstration basis and do some things with channelizers or bolt downs. Sometimes that demonstration, you get a sense, hey, the roundabout here will work, or, oh God, that didn't work out the way we thought it would, the community hates it. But it's an option. If we try to narrow some, median two-way left turn lanes, take them out, put some channelizers down there so that, law enforcement can get through there, or emergency services, but it gives us a little more room to work with, and we double yellow it. We're getting at some things, and that's what we want to try. And that's why I'm bringing up demonstration, because if we pilot something and we do a demonstration, it gives us some ability to have some flexibility. But the issue is setting up the contractual basis of the contract with the timeline, getting out there.
I mean, it sounds to me like most of us would like to know if there's a way to get to landscape medians in 45-mile-an-hour plus areas.
I think what you may see is more of a curved median with low-level landscaping in it, and the option that Rob and I've talked a little bit with Rob is options for maybe not hitting it per se, but reinforcing it to where vehicles could drive it in an emergency situation where it's stronger. But you could have some grass and some other low-level stuff in there that just.
Yeah, well, it's way just to kind of echo you, and the purpose of this too is, you're hearing a lot of restrictions and kind of things at Caltrans, but if the community and everybody feels, no, this is what we want, it's those trees and everything, don't let that prevent you kind of a thing. If that's something that community really feels is really important, then that's what you guys gotta bring.
We can take that in and take that input, and it helps.
Yeah, and then from there, let us kind of work and see how we can achieve that, and if the rules need to be changed or something needs to be adjusted, so we can get what you need out there, then that's what so Lee's just telling you the constrictions you have now, but that doesn't throttle anybody from coming up with different ideas. So if the community feels, these trees are important, and they're having the big trees and like over there on T.O. Boulevard, that kind of look, that's what you guys should recommend.
And maybe it's only for a few blocks or a couple miles. It reduces to 40, then open back up to 45. Reduces to 40, that dynamic speed is
everything's open. Everything's open, so nothing is restricted.
Here I am, almost sweltering, right? That's not what we're doing. See, I fell into the trap. Sorry, but
no, but I mean, I think this is what we're trying to figure out. Is it's a labyrinth, and legal restrictions and geographic restrictions.
There's an example where they did that. If you look at Mulholland Highway from Calabasas High School going towards Gelson's, there's 4 lanes.
Right.
They cut it down to 2 lanes and put a median in with all trees. The trees are definitely bigger than 4 inches around it. So they did that there. The speed limit was 40 for that single stretch, and it slowed stuff down. It also backed some traffic up because all the traffic getting into that high school in the morning and getting out, and also the other school that's up there now. But that used to be 4 lanes, now it's 2. And it's all trees.
I have a couple of comments. Obviously, the bike lane, I think, would reduce cars off the road, and you could take the parking away and put bike racks. I mean, I would bike to Ralph's, remember, I would bike to the new shop where PC Green was. Enforcement, engineering, and education. I know that the LA County did this Go Safely campaign for us, and I haven't seen anything coming into Malibu where they're enforcing that. I mean, are they working with you guys to do signs or do anything like? And then I think it would be good if, since we're paying for the CHP and LA Sheriff here in Malibu, why aren't we having the entryways into Malibu more enforced so that they know when they're coming here they're going to get tickets? So I don't know if the state does that or who's in charge of that, but I think they can work.
Office of Traffic Safety is working on it. We've had some dialogue with them. Even their engineers on over a couple of things, so we need to get back in touch with them because there were some items we had in their court, we're waiting to communicate with we've got some options right now with the records order. But they would come in and just replace out some signage or change up some signage, and we're waiting to get communication finished up on that. So,
Then tomorrow at 5 o'clock at Gloves Park, the city of Malibu is launching our own campaign, education campaign, which will educate our residents to, like they do a pledge, kind of like Oprah did the pledge not to text and drive. This will be to cruise Malibu at a safe speed, like not going over the speed limit. So, I mean, I'm sure we'll have to work with Caltrans for signage or promotion or something. I'm sure Susan knows more about that than I do. I hope everyone will come to that tomorrow.
Yeah. So I guess the next step is that you guys come back on the 11th. We're gonna set up everything here. I think there's flyers right outside, so that talks about the upcoming meetings and with that, I think you want to wrap up or kind of.
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to let you know about the plan. It will contain short-term, medium-term, and long-term sort of measures in it. So, with that, anybody else? Marlon, anybody want to say anything?
Yeah, I'll just say some closing remarks. Again, thank you, committee members, joint committee members, for allowing us the opportunity to share what we plan out today and in the future. And we do really appreciate your feedback. This is very instrumental for us to really lay down the bare bones of the plan for what you all expect for what is going to be in the plan. And I just want to also just make sure that you guys remember your guys' feedback is extremely important. We know the community's, the general public's input is very important, but your all input is extremely important. Being the eyes and ears of the community, that's something that we really value. So I encourage you to definitely reach out to us directly if you have particular thoughts. I think we've captured a lot this evening, and we definitely want to take those and incorporate those into the plan. But I'm looking forward to our future event in July 11th. We'll definitely make sure to have all of the visuals out there so folks can get a real flavor for what can be possible for the corridor. But just keep in mind that we really want you guys to share your input with us as well, because that means very much to us. And also thank you to Rob for putting this all together and bringing this in. So thank you guys, and if you have any remarks, we're happy to take them as well. Appreciate it.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you.